Welcome to another episode of Tatum Talks with British Speedway legend Kelvin Tatum, who is back out on patrol around not just the UK but Europe as well. The season underway, of course, in the Road Motor Oil Premiership on TNT Sports. And we've got action as well in the Speedway Grand Prix series. We're firmly into the season now, and there's lots to chat about, lots to look back on, and lots to look ahead to. At the time of recording this, the British final is just around the corner, and we've got more Grand Prix action, not least at Warsaw, to look ahead to as well. But welcome, Kelv. You've had your own bike woes this morning, though. You're in a place of confusion because your e-bike won't. Well, the e-bit's not working.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's gone analog on me,
No.
and they are quite heavy when you haven't got the e-bit working. So it's a bit disappointing, and I've been fiddling around with it, but it refuses to burst back into life. So it's a sad day. It's a sad day, Ian. So let's hope that the podcast can cheer me up.
There you are. It's a sort of a flaunt figure of that rider stood with his hands in the air at the pit gate, and you've missed the boat. Yeah.
Exactly.
So then, let's have a look at where shall we start? We should start the Grand Prix first, because of course we had the first round of the Speedway Grand Prix in Landshut. Weather was a bit of a concern, I think. I didn't have too much concern with the weather. I didn't spot that bit because I was watching it at Workington. We'd been doing a commentary at Workington on the afternoon, which had some stunning racing, to be fair. There was a heat there. Heat 5 in that meeting between Workington and Scunthorpe was separated by transponders, and there was something like 0.001 second between first and third. Three of them came across the line together. It would have been a dead heat in the olden days, but transponders sorted it. But so we had it there in the sunshine at Workington by the coast, watching on as Bartosz Zmarzlik did his thing. But Brady Kurtz, I think the story there on his debut, not just doing well in the Grand Prix, but in that getting through to that sprint as well, getting some World Championship points on the board. Yeah,
brilliant start for Brady. He rode with real confidence, and he's a really professional guy now. He looks like he's really at one with everything, and stepping into it as a fully fledged Grand Prix rider for the first time he started. He will be disappointed not to have made the rostrum. He may reflect on hindsight being what it is, that he chose the wrong gate in the final, but in truth he's got off to a really good start and an encouraging start for him, and I'm sure he'll be looking forward to the upcoming Grand Prix as a consequence. He would have, there will be definitely more belief, I believe, going into the next Grand Prix. And it's a busy month with 3 Grand Prix this month. So, brilliant from Kurtz. I think that was really encouraging. Bartosz Zmarzlik, of course, was actually red hot right from the get-go. New format, new qualifying. A lot of people suggesting that it was introduced to try and stop him. It did everything bar that, because he basically maxed out. He was fabulous, and there was some controversy. He was late to the draw. He should have had the first draw for the evening. He ended up getting the last draw because he was a few seconds late, which he was unhappy about. And there were mitigating circumstances there. That was quite draconian, that decision. But beware the angered world champion, I would suggest, because he then put in a performance which was outstanding, and he came away with 24 points. So, we're up and running. Fair play to Bewley. I thought Bewley was steady. He didn't grab your attention during the first 20 races, but the move around the first corner in the final really put it on the line. Nearly tore his leg off going down the back straight. That's how committed he was. He even said in the interview he thought he'd broken his foot. But that was great for him to pick up a second place. But I've got to say, it's ominous for the opposition when Bartosz Zmarzlik can ride as well as that.
Yeah, it was an impressive performance. We did find that I think Gate 1 was really benefiting the riders, wasn't it, throughout? Obviously, they all get it at some point, so I guess it evens out. But from that point of view, it's perhaps a little bit predictable to an extent. But the only riders really breaking that trend were the likes of Zmarzlik and Kurtz, and I think Anders Thompson maybe might have popped out as well. He was doing all right.
He was, Thompson started strongly, actually, and it was surprising. Before the podcast, I actually look back at the results, and actually he faded quite badly at the second half of the meeting, which sort of I thought he did better than he actually ended up doing. He didn't quite deliver towards the back end of the meeting. But yes, Gate 1 was hugely advantageous. And when you look at Lebedev's performance, he actually got Gate 1 on 3 consecutive times at the back end of the meetings, which no question was of benefit to him, to making it through with the last chance qualifier with only the winner going in. Of course, that's changed. But yeah, I like the new format. I thought, particularly for qualifying. I know a lot of people were raving it about the race format. I don't dislike it, but I haven't fallen in love with it either. I think I need to see 1 or 2 more Grand Prix just to see exactly how that works out. But there's no doubt, purely from a selfish point of view, Ian, and you'd be exactly the same, if you were commentating on qualifying, it's a game changer. Yeah. It is a game changer because clearly you've got jeopardy, you've got the clock, you've got has he done it, has he not? Yes, he's done it. All of that really was much more exciting.
And a bit of drama as well, because didn't Brady Kurtz come out and do a couple of practice starts in his time too?
Oh, mate, crazy. Like, I know Aussies can be laid back, but he just took it to a whole new level. I mean, he was horizontal when he came out for his minute dash. And I mean, I'm thinking, not sure you should be doing a practice start. And then he did it again. And both times he managed to get the better time. So I don't know whether he was super confident, whether he was unaware of how much time he had, because the first or second time, I can't remember exactly, but he literally had 2 or 3 seconds left to get the second time in. And, he would have had a bigger margin if he hadn't have had the practice start. But added drama. That just brought an added dynamic that we haven't had before. So that kind of stuff was actually really quite cool.
Yeah, it gives a real focus to it, and I think many of the Grand Prix are going to have this format. Not all of them, because I think some of them where they've got other events going on, it's going to be a bit more of a traditional qualifier, isn't it? So it's not that way every event. I don't think there is a bit of a change.
The only thing that won't happen, Ian, is that you won't have a sprint race.
That's right, yeah.
You'll still have Q3. So effectively, the similar format, it just won't be a race at the end of it, which I'm not quite sure why, but hey. Yeah, 5 sprint races and then 5 with Q3. But even so, it won't be quite as dramatic because there's no World Championship points for those meetings. But I think on 4 more occasions, I think we can look forward to it.
And then, as you say, that it all felt well with the weather. There was rain around. There was a big storm afterwards. So in a way, obviously, it was fortunate that to get the meeting through, because had it happened or the weather come in slightly earlier or whatever, then you might have been in trouble.
Yeah, and the weather changed dramatically. It was 28 degrees when we arrived on Friday. It was chilly and drizzly on Saturday, on and off. We did have rain during the day, but I would say a couple of hours after the meeting, I mean, we had lightning on the way back to the hotel when we were driving out of the stadium. And it was really biblical. And it was still raining heavily when we went to the airport on Sunday. So that was pleasing to avoid that and get off to a start that, some riders will, like Jason Doyle, will reflect on a meeting to forget. And coming back into the series after a long absence from last year where he got off to such a great start. He'll be hoping that the Narodowy in Warsaw next week is a lot more fruitful. He won there last year, so he'd be looking for that. Freddie Lindgren also slightly disappointing. And when you look at it, there are 9 rounds left. It's a fairly short series. Of course, people can turn things around and lots can happen. But with 24 points for Zmarzlik, like Freddie Lindgren is already 12 points behind. That's they're going to need Zmarzlik to trip up.
Yeah. Even
after 1 Grand Prix, and that's why I say his performance, his speed, his hunger and desire were breathtaking. They really were. He won last year, but he never had great speed at times, and to the point where he was experimenting with other engines. But I mean, he hit the ground running in Landshut, which was, as I say, he threw the gauntlet down to everybody else.
Yeah, you think, maybe this might be the year where he sort of tails off and then comes out and pops those scores in, both in the sprint and in the, in the main Grand Prix. And it's like, well, maybe next
back
year.
To the drawing board, people.
But as well with the weather, that could have been a nowadays as well in the pits, you see this, particularly the Grand Prix boys, and I've seen Emil do this, Doyley, Jack Holder. They've got these weather stations now, haven't they, as well, which, they can bring this thing out and it detects the, humidity. And of course, you're talking about thunder and that kind of condition. You've got a lot of humidity and a lot of environmental changes there with the air pressure. And that nowadays, that is such a big thing for the riders. They're getting these readings, they're phoning up their tuners, they're making changes to the timing boxes and all this now. It's getting quite scientific in the pits these days.
Yes, and I think with the window of the sweet spot of the bike being narrower in modern day times than it was previously, the weather stations are hugely important, and you build up data as you go through the different circumstances, different weather patterns, different temperatures, and as you gain the data, you can reflect on it and actually have a more educated way of making decisions with bike setup. Because clearly, setup and getting the bike to run, like Jason. I don't know if he rode as well as he might have done, but the bike clearly didn't work as well as it should have done. And I think that it's an added tool that the riders are beginning to use, which makes sense, doesn't it? Makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot more goes on than just looking at it and going, well, I'll stick that sprocket on the back and away we go. It's got a bit more involved, doesn't it?
Air in the tyres, let's go. It's not quite as straightforward as that. No. And as I say, the margins are so small and everybody's got good equipment. And there isn't a vast difference between it. So maximising everything you possibly can, of course, vital, I would say.
So for the Grand Prix Series N, we move on next to the big one now, biggest on the calendar, Warsaw in Poland, the Narodowy Stadium. There'll be 50-odd thousand people there. Obviously, always a big event. Obviously, in this country now, we've lost Cardiff, so we have nothing really to compete on that scale anymore. But a focal point. Obviously, we know how big Speedway is in Poland. And there is that thing, though, about it that nobody has home track advantage. It's a temporary track, and so there is that potential jeopardy there. And perhaps we have seen a variety of winners on these particular circuits.
Yes, absolutely. There's no question that is a very valid point that you bring up about the fact that it is very different from a traditional Polish speedway track. It's not Wrocław, Gorzów, Torun, very far from it. So home track advantage, certainly for the Polish contingent, doesn't exist. And going further to that, a Polish rider hasn't won in an Narodowy. They got on the rostrum, and until last year, Bartosz Zmarzlik hadn't made the final. So the fact of the matter is that they will be very much hoping that a Polish rider can win. I believe it's Dudek is the wild card.
Yes.
Not such a strong contingent in the Polish ranks right now, which is slightly surprising. Kubera is solid, but is he a winner? I'm not sure. He's yet to prove that. Bartosz Zmarzlik is, but without him, the Poles are still, I think they're not quite maybe as strong as they once were. They're waiting for the new SGP2 riders like Sieniak, Przemski, Victor Przemski, those type of riders to really start making an impact at senior level. But the Narodowy is a wonderful stadium. Warsaw, the capital city, the national stadium. It's a high-profile Grand Prix, and it's one that is very well attended, and there's a fabulous atmosphere there. So, I'm sure every rider wants to win in there.
And 3 Grand Prix in May as well. We've had the first one, of course, Warsaw next, and then to Prague as well. So it is a packed month to get things underway. And then, of course, June's round the corner, Manchester to come. But just a quick word on Prague. That's right at the very end of the month, 31st of May. So it'll be another bank holiday kind of vibe going on around there as well. And again, one of the tracks that's been on the calendar for quite a while now. I think a lot of people quite like a trip to Prague as well.
Yeah, well, it's a lively place to go. There's plenty on offer in Prague, that's for sure. But it's I think it's nearly been ever present. I think it's only missed 1 or 2 years. I mean, it's been around forever, the Marketa Stadium on the Grand Prix calendar. And of course, Martin Vaclik has won 3 consecutive Grand Prix there in the last 3 years. A wonderful run of form. Can he repeat that again? It would be wonderful if he could, I'm sure. It's effectively his home Grand Prix. But there's, they've got Jankovic, the Czech people, the Czech fans. And you'd like to think that Jan would maybe put in a really strong performance. He's capable, I think. I think he is capable, but that would be a bit of a fairy tale, wouldn't it, if they got one of their own to win in the Marquetta. But yeah, you say it's a busy month for Grand Prix.
Yeah, it would certainly be a popular one, and he's a popular rider as well, Jan Kvek. And looking at last time out in Prague, obviously, as you say, Vasilik won it. Ty Wolfenden, obviously unfortunate to see his situation at the moment after that terrible crash at the start of the season in Poland. Jason Doyle was on the podium. Matt Sajanowski had a decent one as well. So the riders that we often see here in Britain tend to do okay in Prague over the years.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks where it's a little hit and miss. You can have a fabulous Grand Prix there, or you can have a rather dull one. It's very much dependent on the weather leading up to it. It's an odd surface. It's sort of a very gravelly material that can dry too quickly, or it can be overwatered. It's quite a challenge. Thomas Topinka, actually, who is the track man there, the chief curator for the track there, does a decent job. But he is very much in the lap of the gods when it comes to the track prep, because it can be red hot actually in the Czech Republic at the end of May, and that in itself brings challenges. But you're right, yeah. British riders technically it's quite challenging. The surface has nothing to do with the UK. I mean, there's nothing quite like it here. I couldn't tell you there's a track in the UK that would be very similar. There isn't, but they do for whatever reason. They seem to. But let's hope that Dan Bewley or Robert Lambert can get up there. But for Bewley, like getting off to a second place after a disappointing qualifying actually in Landshut, which was a surprise. I'm sure he'll be looking to go well there, but you got to make starts in the Prague. You've got to make starts. It's a tough place to overtake.
It's a part of Speedway that I think a lot of fans don't really realise how big a variable it is. That they see a Speedway track and they think, well, you got your bike and you arrive at this stadium and you put your bike on there, and then why aren't you going as fast as you normally go around Bellevue or Kings Lynn or wherever? And the difference in the material here versus elsewhere in the world is actually quite big, isn't it? Because here, obviously, we're quite clay-based, and that means there's grip in the track. You get these sandier surfaces, obviously more cinder tracks in some places as well. So just talk to us in your experience of when you might have had, been flying at home for your team when you're riding for Coventry, for example, and then you go out with Great Britain and you're representing the nation or yourself in an individual event, and just everything that's been working perfectly just doesn't quite happen for one reason or another. Absolutely,
and it can be really frustrating because you get to a place where it's a great big track, and you think, crikey, I'm going to need plenty of horsepower here, but conditions can catch you out, and it can be slick, and you can't get any grip, and you can't get any, and you'll get somebody that looks like they can hardly ride the bike, and they'll go by you. And I've had it, and that is part and parcel of being an international rider. You need to become, adept at being able to read those conditions and being able to have different types of setups to be able to compete at it. But you're right. Riding in the UK is not just more technically demanding from the point of view of the surface. We have tighter tracks and less room at times. But the surface on the continent requires a different mindset and a slightly different way of riding. And you need to sort of switch onto that. And as I say, generally, engines are, I would suggest, set up slightly differently for it. But it is a challenge, definitely.
So, your next in action then next weekend on the Grand Prix circuit. That's you've got a couple of fixtures coming up, as we mentioned. We've got Warsaw on the 17th of May, and then Prague 31st of May on TNT Sports, of course. But between that, your next fixture is going to be the British final, I believe, on Monday, National Speedway Stadium. And yes, this will also decide the wild card for both of the British Grand Prix at Manchester as well. And, of course, that'll be the same circuit where the British final is on. So here's the full lineup in draw order. Leon Flint, Chris Harris, Dan Julks, well, question mark there because he was carted off to hospital last night riding for Oxford at Poole. Tom Brennan at 4, 5 is Dan Thompson, Louis Kerr 6, 7 Kyle Howarth, 8 Connor Mountain, Drew Kemp 9, 10 Robert Lambert, 11 Steve Worrell, 12 Adam Ellis, Danny King 13, Dan Bewley 14, Anders Rowe 15 and Charles Wright 16. So a real mix there of former champions, Grand Prix riders and some rising stars as well. And as we know, we saw last year, obviously Tom Brennan made the podium. He's going well wherever he's riding at the moment with Ipswich and also doing pretty good. I think he's riding for Bydgoszcz, isn't he? I think in Poland as well. So he's been doing all right there. So he'll be looking to go one better, of course. But of course, you've got the 2 Grand Prix riders, Dan Bewley and Robert Lambert. Dan Bewley going for 4 titles in a row, which would equal Barry Briggs's record.
Yeah, and he will be the red-hot favourite, and he has every right to be. He's at his home track, as you say. He's won it for the last 3 years. He won it in fine style last year by getting the better of Ty Wolfenden in the final. That was quite a tear-up. A disappointing showing from Robert Lambert in 24. I'm sure he's very determined to put that right in 25. And it could be a shootout between those two. Tom Brennan is a really accomplished rider now. He's riding for the best team in the country right now, the Ipswich Witches. He's riding abroad. He's gaining valuable experience. And when you think you can get 2 Grand Prix out of the result, even if he was the first non-Grand Prix rider on the night, he doesn't necessarily have to win. So if it works out that way. I'm sure Tom Brennan would be very excited about being able to compete in 2 Grand Prix. That's 20% of the series. And so it's quite significant, isn't it? It really is quite significant. So it's a major carrot for somebody like him. But it's an unpredictable night. We've seen Charles Wright be British champion a few years back, Adam Ellis, Danny King, when it was pouring with rain. I think it must be about 2016 now. It was quite some time ago. But, it can throw up a, slightly surprising result. It's always a competitive night. And riders, the national championship, there's a sense of pride about it, isn't there? So the fact is that, it's something that you want to do well in. So, yeah, very much looking forward to it. The venue's great, we know that. The weather looks good. I've got to say, the weather forecast for Monday next week in Manchester is surprisingly good. I don't know if they're actually just fooling us, messing around with us.
When was the last time the weather looked like that in Manchester?
Well, exactly.
Sunshine all week.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I'm questioning it. I'm sure there's somebody there just having a bit of a giggle with us. But no, I'd be delighted if it was like 22 degrees. Absolutely chuffed to bits, and I'm sure everybody would be as well. So I think we're in for a cracker of a night. But, if it goes true to form, Ian, it'll be Robert Lambert and Dan Bewley battling it out for the win. But as I say, it doesn't always quite work out like that. So it'll be an exciting night. It always is.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. It is going to be an exciting night. And then you've got, as I say, 1 or 2 riders in there that are capable of causing a surprise. Obviously, Charles Wright generally goes well around there and capable of sticking the elbows out. Dan Thompson, perhaps one to talk about as well. He won the British semi-final to get his place in there, which was at Leicester last week at the time of recording this. And that was still a decent crowd of riders there looking to get there. Well, I think there were 6 places up for grabs to get into the main meeting, and he won that. Obviously around Leicester, a track he knows very well, but he also says that Leicester's changed quite a bit since he was riding there regularly as a youngster coming through. He could be one to watch, though, because he's a bit of a man on a mission at the moment, Dan Thompson, putting some good scores in for Ipswich, but also for Glasgow as well. He got a paid maximum on Sunday at Glasgow, and he certainly could be one of those spoilers on the outside of the betting, if you like, to certainly keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I know that talking to Chris Louis in particular, they're very pleased with him. They like him. And that they feel that he has got a bright future and he's got a lot of potential. He goes about his business in a very thoughtful manner. He's a thinking rider. He has an old school style, one that I wasn't sure was going to really adapt to the modern day speedway, but he makes it work. And winning that meeting to qualify for the British final shows you that the kids ride up for it. And it wouldn't be a complete surprise if he makes the final and gets to the latter stages at the British final. You told me prior to doing the podcast he's in the qualifier for the SGP2 series, which is again at Glasgow, which will of course be of benefit with it being his home club in the championship. So he's a young kid. He's pretty mature. He's got pretty mature head on his shoulders. So yeah, look, I would like to see him go well, and if he can just mix it up a bit, that'll be great. But yeah, Dan Thompson's somebody going in the right way.
Yeah, and on that subject, the SGP2 qualifier is happening in a couple of weeks, 24th of May. It's a Saturday at Glasgow, and it's one of 3 meetings that are taking place, and it'll be obviously a place in the World Under-21 Series, which is the SGP2.
Yes. Well, they all have to qualify, don't they? They all have. There's no top 6 from last year, so everybody. So effectively, there are 3 qualifiers. It's Debrecen, Pardubice, and Glasgow, and they will all come together, of course, in the series, which I believe, if I'm right, will start in July in Manila, and the 3 rounds which culminate in Denmark at the final round of the World Championship. So, it's a great way of actually getting your name out there. And of course, if you do well in the SGP2, I think it leads on to riding abroad and really putting yourself in the shop window. So, hopefully our British riders competing. You said his brothers there, the reserve. We've got Jake Mulford there and Ashton Bowden. Ashton Bowden rides up there. So, if he can get his trapping hand on, who knows? He might just creep in.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the rest of the lineup, but I know certainly for Britain, obviously Dan Thompson, Ashton Bowden, and Jake Mulford in the main meeting. Joe Thompson and Luke Harrison are reserves. The other qualifiers, the reigning under-21 champion Sam Hagen is heading to the Czech Republic, and Luke Colleen will be riding at Debrecen in Hungary. The British under-21 championships will be taking place before that, though, so Sam Hagen may not be the reigning under-21 champion by then. We'll find out, but the under-21 championships are taking place on the 18th of May, the week before. Again, at Glasgow. So there's another chance for Dan Thompson to get some practice in the week before. Well, for them all to get some practice in the week before.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Well, I wish them all the very best of luck. And if there's an opportunity for British riders to really start mixing at HGP2, Poland have this incredible record at under-21 level, whether it's the team version or individually. It's quite remarkable how they have produced riders at that level. And if you are able to compete with them and beat them, that's a big feather in your cap.
Yeah, so good luck to all the boys taking part in that one at Glasgow. And of course, if you're in the area, get down. It's going to be a big event. You can go along and watch it, of course. Proper FIM level international event, the SGP2 qualifier, which will be handy. You'll also see some of the rising stars of World Speedway, I guess, battling out for a place in SGP2. Be a great afternoon of Speedway. Let's turn our attention then to British Speedway now. You've taken in your first meeting on TNT Sports. I don't think it'll go down as one of the classics, but you were there at Kings Lynn versus Oxford, and it was a win for Kings Lynn.
Yeah, and in truth, it was always going to be a win for Kings Lynn. They're a team that have got a very strong, solid lineup. Oxford at that point hadn't won a match, so they went into that meeting really on the back foot. Kings Lynn is a demanding place. Only Maciej Janowski in his last 3 rides showed any real intent, any real fight, which was to his credit, in truth, because Peter Kilderman, Rowan Tungate, even Eric Riss, they were all struggling. I mean, they just couldn't get it together at all. Fair play to Kings Lynn. You can only beat who's put in front of you. And they look a really good unit, actually, Kings Lynn. And with the way they're set up, they got beat Bank Holiday, and they got beat quite quite convincingly, actually, in the end. They were leading against Ipswich, but then got rolled over by 16.
Yeah.
Harris actually going from number 6 to riding at 1. He didn't have a great day. But Kings Lynn generally, I think they'll be okay. And I sense that they might creep into the playoffs. They might just do it. I think if I look at it, I'm looking at Bellevue, Sheffield, and Ipswich. I sense those 3 will be nailed on, but the fourth place, I think could be up for grabs, possibly between Leicester and Kings Lynn. So we'll see how that develops through the season. But I'm pleased for the public also at the Adrian Flux up in Kings Lynn. They've had torturous seasons. I mean, awful. You know, injuries, riders, Artem Laguta coming, doesn't look like he wanted to be there, he disappeared. I mean, it has been quite a roller coaster of a ride for the Stars in recent times. So, this it's a slightly elderly team, an experienced team, I think we're being kind. Dad's Army, Ryan and Rob Lyon won with Dad's Army before, can he do it again? But he's always going to have a good reserve, isn't he? Got Nikolai Clint at reserve now. So that can win you matches.
And Nikolai Clint was packing the scores away on his first appearance at reserve, as you say. They've just got that thing now of the Ben Cook being out. And we were down at Poole a couple of weeks ago and stayed at Midlow's, and Ben and Zach Cook are still living there, and Ben was there, and he's it's like poor arm in a sling for a while. I think he's looking at a couple of weeks ago. It's probably another 6 or 7 weeks yet before he might be in a position to sort of review it. He's working hard on it, but obviously between then it's going to be guests and ride replacement for them. But obviously,
I don't think is terrible. I know that's hard on Ben, and of course Ben will be doing everything he possibly can to get back. He was very unfortunate to have. It's a nasty injury, scaphoid, and the wrist injury. It's not ideal, but they've got cover, haven't they? They've got cover. They've got. Yeah. I don't quite know who takes rides for him, but their averages were so even. I think probably everybody can take rides for him. That will change, but I think, as I say, when Cook comes back in, he'll have to obviously feed his way back in and find confidence. Oxford, on the other hand, they were woeful. I mean, they really weren't very good. I'm pleased to see that they've had a couple of wins over the bank holiday weekend. They need that. Like Peter Schroek, I mean, he probably just doesn't know what to do with them. But clearly, probably what he has done, he's probably read the right act. Because there were some performances there that were just way below par. Rowan Tungate hadn't got going. Peter Kildum had been injured, out of British Speedway for a long time. They need more from him. But whether they're going to be a threat for a playoff position, I'm not sure, actually. But they need to win at home and just keep the home crowd happy.
Yeah, well, they have made a change. Francis Gust's out, and Craig Cook has come into the Oxford side, and Craig Cook got a 15-point maximum against Birmingham in the evening meeting, and had a decent first meeting in the afternoon as well. So that is a change, and I think that is one thing that did help them get the win, the 2 wins was that change. And obviously a lot's been written and said about Craig Cook, but I have to say that having done a meeting, it was Glasgow versus Berwick that we did on Sunday, and Craig Cook had a decent meeting there as well. Had a couple of dodgy ones, but I think he had a puncture, he said, in one of them, and just the wrong setup in the other because they'd watered the track and it changed completely what he'd gone out with. He seems in a good place. Do you know, he seems like pretty relaxed. He seems on it. He's got decent machinery, and Craig Cook firing is a good rider.
He is, and he has plenty of ability. And it's been difficult times for him. And if he can maintain that mental attitude, I'm sure he can do a fine job for, the Oxford Spars. I feel for Gusts. I quite like him. He's quite a cheeky chappy. But you can understand that they need to do something. And riders are not that available. And you can't just suddenly wave this magic wand over teams to bring in somebody. Sheffield had that when they lost Ty Woofenden. Talking to Simon Stead. Not an easy decision regarding to who to replace the team. So they had to let
Daniel Hume.
Daniel Hume, yeah, absolutely. So he's gone through no fault of his own because of circumstances. But hey, look, if Cook can come in and do a good job for the Spires, well, he's more than capable. He's more than capable, and that was evident on Monday. So maybe that'll kickstart their season.
The big question is, who is going to stop the Ipswich Witches? Because the Bellevue Aces certainly can't. And we've also seen as well, everybody's had a go at them so far. Sheffield, I think, feel that they are the team to have a go, and they're riding against Ipswich very soon. I did the podcast, the British Speedway podcast. We had an interview with Josh Pickering on it, and he says that, look, and honestly, you would expect me to say this, but I think that with our side, we've got the team that can be the team that causes the challenge this year. Bellevue, of course, raced Sheffield home and away. They got a narrow victory last heat decider, had to play a tack sub in heat 14 to get back into it, and it worked. And then it was last heat decider, but then Sheffield demolished Bellevue at Ollerton on Monday night. But yeah, Ipswich remain unbeaten in all measures, they're definitely the team to beat at the moment. But obviously somebody's going to, at some point, you would think. But who?
Or will they be the Invincibles?
Well, that is the question. Is it going to be done? Is it going to be done?
Absolutely, and it would be quite incredible if they were able to go through the season unbeaten. And the lineup they've got, I bet you the odds aren't that long. I bet you they're fairly short odds, because it is a fabulous team. And the introduction and the signing of Tom Brennan, and the way they've balanced it out with shining British riders, with reduction to the averages, they've been able to build a team. And Jordan Jenkins down at reserve, rising star, with Dan Thompson there. I admire Josh Pickering. Well, to be honest, you know, Josh Pickering is probably one of the most optimistic people you'll ever meet in your life. You know, whether you're talking about playing Tiddlywinks or racing Speedway, he's a very infectious character. I like him, and I think he's the ideal fella to be captain, isn't he? He's that type of fella. So, but whether they've got the measure of the Witches, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think you know, when you take a rider of Wolfenden's class out of a team and you replace them with Sedgman and Louis Kerr, with respect to those two lads, they're not three-time world champions. So, but you know, like anything can happen, and they're a determined lot. You know, Chris Holder's come in doing a great job. Jack Holder, if he can find the consistency that he once had, who knows? But for me, I fancy Witches. I think that there will be. I think the only way that your Witches can be beat in 2025 is they beat themselves, and that comes primarily that's injury. Like we saw happen with them. If that literally strikes and they get that curse that they had last year, that can halt them. But if they're fully fit, they've got power everywhere.
Yeah, that is the question, is it? It's how they react to injuries if and when they come along. They'll be hoping that they pay their dues on that one.
Absolutely. But no, you know, I think that there will be some fantastic, and I'm sure the Sheffield Tigers will be very highly motivated to prove me and everybody else wrong, that they're going to be the number one team in the country. They've won a league recently, but there should be some real good tear-ups. I'm sure that there will be box office stuff through the season. When are they racing each other? You're looking at something. They're racing each other.
The 15th of May. So it's coming up a week today. Recording this on the 8th. So next week they're riding each other on at Sheffield.
Well, that's an interesting one, because that's actually the Thursday night before the Friday in Nadadovi for quali. Because it's a temporary track, you've got qualifying on the Friday afternoon. So we'll be interested to see, you know, the reaction of Doyle and Holder, but I'm sure that the juices will be flowing on that particular night in Allerton, and people want to kill me for saying Allerton, because you say Allerton, I say Allerton, because it's actually spelled OWL.
You're right. I
infuriate the fans, because they always come up and say Allerton it is, Kelvin. Allerton, from where I am, mate.
It's one of these places in Yorkshire, because I'm from just down the road from there originally, and I always called it Owlerton, right? Always. And then it's only people from Sheffield who actually call it Owlerton.
Oh, really?
But, yeah, and you get that in Yorkshire a lot. You get a lot of places that are pronounced differently if you're not from the area than if you're actually from that town. You say it differently, and people say you got it wrong. But I think, to be honest, anything's passable. I think Owlerton I can go with, because I did say that until. Now everybody goes Owlerton, but that's sort of Sheffield. Right, that's more of a Sheffield accent, though.
I'm sticking to my guns. I'm going to be Owlerton all day long. It's like Southwell and Southwell. I mean, it's the same deal, isn't it? Or Newcastle and Newcastle. Newcastle, to me, if you come from that neck of the woods, it's Newcastle. But there we are. Anyway, I'm sure that the Sheffield Tigers will be they'll be determined, and Simon Stead and Damien Bates and everybody concerned will be very keen to do well this year.
Yeah,
and I hope so. We want some proper speedway, don't we?
Well, that's it. We want some good action to look forward to, and some close racing as well. How was your hospitality at Kings Lynn, can I ask? Because when we were there, they the first time this has happened to me. This probably happens to you as a matter of course, but they brought lemon drizzle cake and coffees throughout the fixture, which
fantastic.
Is extra level of service there.
Absolutely, you need to have more of that, Ian. I mean, come on, mate. You know, a man in your position. I mean, that's the very least you deserve. It's the very least you deserve.
Yeah, but what I've done, we went to
somebody wiping your brow. You know what I mean? I mean, come on.
Well, I mentioned this, and then we went to Edinburgh on Friday, and then out of nowhere, somebody comes along with a freshly baked cake. And it was still warm in this thing. They presented this cake. Oh, we said we want to offer you some hospitality here in Edinburgh. And then somebody else came and gave me a box of biscuits. And then I ended up with whiskey miniatures, which is always dangerous before a commentary. 3 cans of Iron Brew, and goodness knows what. And then, so I sensed an opportunity, knowing that we were going to Glasgow on Sunday. I thought, well, Glasgow are going to surely bite. They're not going to want to be outdone by Edinburgh, and so we get to Glasgow and they produce a full buffet platter. So we've gone from nothing, now it's going up in the world.
Well, let me just tell you a little story. You must be careful when you are live on air when you start eating.
Yes,
because I have had an experience, not personally, but I have witnessed it in the commentary booth where food has been taken and it's been lodged in the throat, and it can create some uncomfortable moments when, particularly if they throw back to you slightly earlier than you were expecting, and you can't speak, and you turn purple and red, and basically you're dying. And so I have had that. And so as much as it is very welcome, I must say at Kings Lynn they were lovely. They were lovely. And clearly you're being spoilt rotten now, mate. Crikey.
Well, look, we're going round now, and we're trying to... We're seeing how they're paying more
Michelin star food by the end of the season, aren't you? It's going to be extraordinary.
Yeah,
you're going to have Gordon Ramsay on site. Cooking up something.
So much so that apparently, the lady who runs the tea bar at Kings Lynn sent me a message the weekend saying that obviously word's getting round about the quality of the hospitality at Kings Lynn, and even to the point that Phil Morris marched into their tea hut and said that I hear that your reputation goes before you. You're the finest tea ladies in Speedway.
Yeah,
but everybody's now trying to up their game, so it's good for us all.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm all for it. But as I say, you do just have to temper it. Your timing with eating on air, as you will be well aware, has to be spot on.
Yeah, try and save it for the end of the meeting if I possibly can. Just as you say, for security reasons, you've got to be very careful. So next on your road show, you're heading. Obviously, you've got a couple of weeks in Manchester coming up now because you've got a British final on Monday, and then Bellevue versus Leicester the week after on TNT, and then the week after that, Birmingham versus Kings Lynn. So that's your fixtures coming up for May on TV in British Speedway.
We've spoken about the British final. not really sure what to think about Bellevue Leicester. I think it could be quite good, but I'm expecting Bellevue to get the better of Leicester. But, with Stuart Dixon coming to town, with his crew, they're always going to be fighting hard. Whether they're good enough to... I think what they'll be doing, they'll want to keep that as tight as they possibly can, I would suggest. And then Birmingham Kings Lynn could be quite good. Birmingham not I tell you, Michael Jepsen-Jensen. Michael Jepsen-Jensen, he's having a good run. And I'm impressed because where has Michael Jepsen-Jensen been? I mean, I saw him a decade ago when he burst on the scene, won a Grand Prix as a wild card, won the World Cup for Denmark, and I thought, this guy's going to be a superstar. But then it almost seemed like it all got too much for him, Ian. Yeah. And he disappeared. But he's now probably in his early 30s. I'm not quite sure how old he is. But he's riding well. He's riding well in Poland as well. I've seen some of his scores there. He's going well. So, yeah.
Yeah. He had... even by his own admission, he kind of sort of drifted off into the background a little bit for one reason or another. But last year in Poland, he was one of the top riders in Extraliga. He really got it going in Poland, and now, showing what he can do. And I did an interview with him on the Premiership Media Day with Michael Jepsen-Jensen, and he said that for him that this was kind of a last chance for him to have to potentially get himself in the picture and get into the qualifiers for the Grand Prix again, and he felt that he still had it, but if he's going to do it, he needs to do it now, right. and so he's putting his all into it, and I sense that if it doesn't work out in the next year or two, he'll probably disappear back into the ether again. But he's giving it one last real shot and making a real fist of it.
Well, he is, and right now, clearly this refocused and the determination to make it happen now is to his credit, because he's going in the right direction. He's a classy rider, and he wouldn't be out of place. He could, if he rides like this, he would be welcome back into the Grand Prix, that's for sure. But no, Birmingham are a team. Just briefly on that Birmingham Kings Lynn team, you've got Keenan Rue there, who I feel could make a bit of a mark there. I don't know. There are Matty Zagar, question marks. What sort of performance are we going to get from Zagar?
Are we going to see Zagar? He hasn't ridden for a month now?
Yeah, that's not great. I'm not sure what's going on. So I fear a little bit for Birmingham. I do. But let's hope that they are at home against Kings Lynn. That's a strong, because Kings Lynn have come to town thinking they can win. That's for sure. Rob Lyon will be keen to try and pick up points there.
They've made a change as well. Antti Vulas has made way for Paco Castagna in the Birmingham lineup. But I think there is a big question mark about Zagar and what they do with him and his position going forward. It's something that needs resolving, because it's a big position to have in the team that's not being filled.
No, exactly, and if it's genuine, then fair enough. But you could surmise that it isn't, and he just doesn't really fancy it because the team doesn't really match up to his expectations. But that's disappointing if he signed a contract and committed to the season, because for British promoters and any promoters, riders' availability at this stage of the season, when they have made their plans, it's difficult to suddenly to get them to come to the UK with more equipment, extra travel. Logistically, it's a challenge. So, we'll wait and see what actually is the outcome, whether he actually turns up again. But Birmingham, I think Nigel Tolley, Chris Adams, I'm sure they'll be putting their heads together. But I know, talking to Simon Stead, when you have issues with the team, you're trying to make changes, particularly with more established riders, with you're expecting them to score big. There aren't that many out there that are going to just suddenly turn up and do it.
No, exactly. It's very hard to find. As you're saying, it's the logistics as well, isn't it? The plans are fitting in, and now with Sweden getting underway around now, they're all obviously a lot busier too. So it's hard to factor it in.
Exactly, and so you've got people going in all sorts of different directions. But no, I think that hopefully we'll have some close matches, some last heat deciders in the next couple of league matches in May. it was never going to be a last heat decider against Kings Lynn and Oxford, but we got underway. It was a pleasant evening, and you can sort of, it's the first one, but hopefully the next 3 on TNT are a bit more exciting, a bit more nail biting. Certainly British Final is guaranteed to be.
And just finally, just to round off, there's been a lot of chat about Coventry going on over the last few weeks or so, and obviously as a Coventry legend yourself, maybe I know have a word about it, because I did an interview with Jeff Davis, who's involved in the campaign to bring back not just Speedway but stock cars as well, and this is going on in the background, but there does seem to be growing optimism that this could actually come off sooner than later. They've actually got proper backing in place, financial backing. The council are keen to get motorsport restored there. There's obviously a few issues to overcome in terms of the current owners of the stadium not owning it anymore. But they've got a promoter as well, and that is quite significant in that it's Matt Ford who has come out as the potential promoter for Speedway should it go ahead, and obviously his record speaks for itself and everything that's happened with Poole over the years. So should it get over the line, then the building blocks are very much in place for a return of Speedway to Brandon.
Yeah, I wish them all the very best. They've been resilient, that group of people that keep fighting for it, and remarkably they still have some light at the end of the tunnel. And if it were to come to pass and Matt Ford took the reins of Coventry Bees, Matt Ford's record is, second to none. So you'd like to think that he will have a successful setup. But there's no way that Matt Ford would have won anything else. That's just not in his DNA. So, actually, it was rather remiss of me because I did actually see some Coventry people at Kings Lynn and they asked me to mention it, and then I got sidetracked and I didn't. So I was going to mention it on British Final Night, and I will actually on British Final Night, but I wish them all the best. I have a close affection. I had an incredible time with the Coventry Bees. I won 2 league titles. We had a smashing team, and it was probably, some of the best time I had in Speedway there. And to see it come back, I think a lot of people will be very pleased to see it come back. And there's a real hardcore support there. It hasn't frittered away. I sense that it would actually get a really good following of people. So financially, I think that would help, obviously. But let's hope it comes to pass. It would be great.
Absolutely, yeah, and thanks to everybody who's put letters in of support as well, because I think they're trying to get it in the constitution, if you like, that this needs to sort of happen and move on in that direction now after the legal rulings and everything. And
I don't know how much money would be required to get the stadium knocked back into shape. Clearly, it's run down, and there's been all sorts of vandalism and damage. So there will be some investment required. I presume that people are prepared to do that. But yeah, Coventry Bees, it was a huge club. It was a huge club with a rich history. All those British finals, all the riders like Ollie Olsen there, Bucock. I mean, they had Ochiltree. Charles Ochiltree was a fabulous promoter, old school promoter back in the day that I rode for. So yeah, I hope it comes back.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, fingers crossed, and hopefully sooner than later as well. I think the sooner the better as well. And as you say, good support there, and it'd be great to have not just a Speedway track, but a legendary name back in Speedway as well. Yeah. Should that come to pass? Because as you say, all the history that's gone before. Exactly,
and we've lost Wolverhampton, which was a real shock. And to get a big team back in the Midlands, bit of local rivalry with Leicester. That would only be good news. Only good news, certainly. So, yeah, fingers crossed.
Indeed, fingers crossed. And, I think that probably covers everything off for this one, Kelv. And
thanks.
I'll let you get back to fixing your e-bike and see if you can get up that mountain.
Not going to be easy, mate. Certainly if it's analogue and it's about 22 kilos. I mean, crikey. At my stage of life, I think it could be the hill that I go up. I think I'm going to have to rename it Heart Attack Hill because it's. I think I could certainly suffer one if I have to ride it. But no, I'll have to sort that one out. But thanks. I've enjoyed it. Good fun.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, and you can catch Kelvin next on the telly. British final night at Bellevue, and then off to Warsaw for the Speedway Grand Prix on Saturday.